and it's my pleasure to be here today with many of you, old friends and new. It's a great chance to say hello and to talk more about what our priorities are as a government and bring you up to date with the current and fiscal landscape of the province. I was going to give a little bit more about myself, but I think it's been well covered that I've had 10 years in the legislature and time on City Council, and I think a really strong background to assume the role of Finance Minister. But I have to say I was very delighted and privileged when the Premier gave me that opportunity. And I also serve as the Minister responsible for the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation, the Bridge Commission, and the Securities Commission. And I know there's some people here from the Bridge Commission definitely today, but that's another part and dimension of what I do. As I said, it's been a very exciting time since the election. And I know for those of you who follow the economy and our finances closely, you'll know that the last 16 weeks or so has been a very challenging time, as well as an exciting time for me personally, but definitely challenging. As we head into our first budget, I've been touring the province and listening to people about what is important to them. I'm hearing from all walks of life: business leaders, students, small business owners, academics, and the nonprofit sector. Much of what comes up at these meetings are business challenges relating to the economy and discussions about opportunities for us to do things differently. At each of these meetings, I've been very clear to say that I believe the tradition of a pre-budget tour, which is 6 to 8 weeks before budget day, is really too late in the process. You will understand that work has already been underway on the budget for many months at the Department of Finance. So going forward, I've committed to keep the conversation going, and I'll be going year-round to, I've promised in the chambers and the various communities that I've been at throughout the province that I'll be back and I'll be doing post-budget speeches and ongoing consultation, because that's what's going to make a difference next year for the budget as I get ready for that all-important next year's budget. The Ivan report has come out during my pre-budget tour, and it's been a great catalyst for our discussions. And it's come up time and time again, and I'm sure all of you have been discussing it as well in your various organizations. I'm hearing that some municipal councils have made it required reading. Chambers of Commerce and groups like Fusion and Students Nova Scotia are hosting events that generate ideas and solutions. I really like this particular poster. This was the Fusion and Students group, and they said, Nova Scotia youth, this is now. And you know that the cover of the report is now or never. So it's just, they've grasped this, and they're really moving forward. I'm very excited by that. So engaged Nova Scotians across the province are gathering and talking about what they can do to help our province prosper. The Commission told us government cannot do it alone. We need every sector to help us grow our economy. It's encouraging to see people taking that to heart and embracing a different way of doing things. As I see it, the report is a roadmap. Our government is excited to have had this report released so early in our mandate. We're encouraged by the way Nova Scotians have embraced it. Our government will not let this report sit on the shelf. The report says clearly that government alone can't create the change that we need in Nova Scotia, but we can help set the stage and be partners, and that's what we will do. My tour has given me the opportunity to gather insights and reflect on what's happening on the ground. One thing is very clear. People across this province know that we have to change if Nova Scotia is going to have a stronger economic future. There's a saying that I'm often reminded of: Nova Scotians love progress, but hate change. The Ivan report is calling on all of us to challenge these old attitudes and get ready to embrace that change. I recently had the pleasure of speaking with one of our province's most successful entrepreneurs, and what he said really struck me. He said that he believes the key to success in his business, and probably in every business, is saying, sure, I can do that, and then figuring out how you can do it. So Nova Scotia has to become a place where we all start to say, sure, we can do that, and then we find the way to do it, rather than always looking for the reasons why we can't. And I think that's an important shift we have to make. There's no doubt that Nova Scotia has what it needs to succeed. We have resources, a well-educated population, universities, and a prime geographic location. We have some great success stories in business, including many innovative companies that are competing in the global marketplace. I'm sure each of you could name many of these companies, and maybe you're even running one. And some we hear about often, but there's others that we need to talk about more so that we all get to know the good things that are going on. The big challenge for us all is that we need the list of successful businesses and entrepreneurs to get longer. Our biggest challenge is really demographics. As I travel around, I've reached out to younger Nova Scotians to engage them in this discussion about the economy as well. They are facing high unemployment rates, fewer summer jobs, and growing student debt. I was a little disheartened when I visited the students at Sydney Academy to launch my pre-budget tour. Too many of them told me that they don't see a future for themselves in Nova Scotia. The cost of education and student debt may be one of the factors driving their pessimism and the out-migration of young people. Studies show that many young people who come here to study, that we attract here, would like to stay, and many of our own youth would stay if there were job opportunities. From 1990 until 2013, we lost 34,000 young workers. While Canada's population grew 27% in that time, ours only grew 3.3%. More worrisome is that last year, our population fell by over 5,000 people, and half of the people leaving are between 15 and 34. That's the time when they should be transitioning from school to work, starting careers and families, and even thinking about opening their own businesses. But in too many ways, it's hard for our kids to get a start here. Employers are looking for 2 to 5 years experience for entry-level positions. And I'm sure if you're a parent, you've heard your children say that, because I certainly have. This isn't a new problem for us, but our low birth rate means that we can't afford to keep having our youth move out west for those first opportunities. Our economy depends on having a growing labor force, and we need their new ideas, their creativity, and their energy. Government and the private sector have to step up and do more to open doors and give young people relevant job experience. In our platform, Premier McNeil announced a program called Graduate to Opportunities. We will be moving ahead with that, but this program cannot succeed without you, the business community. What we heard from employers before the election is that the first 6 months to a year that you've hired someone new, the young employee costs you money. There's cost for training and cost to get that young person up to speed to start being fully productive. We are going to help fill that time and that cost and make it easier for employers to create opportunities for young people. We'll share more about that in the upcoming budget. Immigration is another area where we need to do better. While we have 2.7% of Canada's population, we don't receive nearly that amount of immigrants. Our current cap under the nominee program of 500 a year is far too low, especially considering other provinces like Manitoba, which is similar in size, receive 5,000 nominee families a year. The Ivany report made it clear that increasing immigration is a critical part of improving our economy. I agree, and our government has made this a priority. It's also an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. My riding of Clayton Park West has seen tremendous growth in the last 20 years, and it's become the most diverse community in Eastern Canada. And that is a result of many immigrants making it their home. All the evidence shows that immigrants create jobs and economic prosperity, but we're not making it easy. For instance, we don't often or always accept their professional credentials or their experience, and we're not always as welcoming as we could be. The issues of retaining our youth and increasing immigration are crucial to our economic prosperity. At just 1.6%, our average economic growth since 1990 is behind all other provinces in Canada. And while I don't like to mention it, in 2012, our economy actually contracted by 0.1%. You can see it on the chart, just a little bit of a dip in 2012. That's very bad news for us. This has greatly affected our deficit for this current year, as we've had to recognize significant downward adjustments to our provincial revenue for prior years. Although we don't have the full picture yet for this year, the prospects for 2013 are not shaping up to be much better. In 2013, the number of people working dropped by 2,000, and that's our biggest employment drop in 20 years. Well, this is projected to be reversed almost exactly. It's still going to be a wash. So we've got a little bit of an improvement, but we're just going to be back where we started. For too many years, our businesses have had too little new capital investment. As government, we have to increase business confidence so that you feel now is the right time to invest in new equipment, technologies, ideas, or start a new business. We also have to expand our export markets and increase trade. Every year, our trade generates less income from exports than we spend on imports. In fact, our trade deficit is consistently among the worst in the country. We need a strong rebound in business investment, greater trade and integration into the global marketplace, and more innovation and entrepreneurship in order to maintain and improve our standard of living. As a result of the economy, our provincial revenues are growing slower than expected. Personal income tax, which is our #1 source of revenue, corporate tax, and HST have all come in below expectations for 2013-14. This isn't unique to Nova Scotia. We're seeing it across Atlantic Canada, but it makes it hard to provide services and balance our budget. Upcoming changes in the Canada Health Transfer will move it to a per capita basis. This will result in the Atlantic provinces receiving $2.5 billion less than we would have over the next decade. Labor costs, which make up a major portion of the provincial budget, are also a pressure. In fact, it is our greatest expense. Today, we are dealing with over 300 bargaining units as a provincial government, and together they account for 57% of our departmental spending. So, in a province that has a $482 million deficit at the last forecast, this creates a very difficult situation. We value our employees and their dedicated work, yet there is a point at which it becomes difficult, if not impossible, to keep providing the kinds of increases that have been seen in past years. At a time when revenue growth is down, pressures for services and their costs are increasing. Our most vulnerable are relying more on community services. Demand for health care continues to rise. Capital investments to maintain our facilities are needed. And Nova Scotians were clear that they want a reinvestment in education. Given all of these realities, I'm sure it will come as no surprise that we will be in a deficit position on budget day. This reinforces the wisdom of our decision as a government not to reduce the HST until we can afford it. Reducing the HST by just 1 cent would cost $195 million, which is something we realistically cannot afford at this time. I value each and every taxpayer dollar. With the support of the Premier, our government will do everything we can to keep a tight rein on expenses. This has to be balanced with our responsibility to deliver services, and Nova Scotians deserve to know the real costs of those services. I'm committed to providing a frank and transparent budget. I have to have a drink after all those negative things, all the bad trends. Thank you. Now we're ready to tackle it. Although too many of the statistics are negative and troubling, I know that working together we can turn this around. There is no alternative. If we don't collectively start to address our challenges, they will stand in the way of long-term prosperity. There's no question that it is the private sector that drives economic growth, but it's also loud and clear that government needs to do its part to clear the way. And the choices and decisions we make have to be sustainable, not just expedient in the short term. The provincial taxes and regulations we have today have been developed over many years in a very piecemeal fashion. It's difficult to know if the tweaks and changes have helped or hindered, and a comprehensive review and update hasn't taken place in a generation. For that reason, I recently launched a complete review of taxes, regulations, and fees. We will chart a path that considers simplicity, fairness, competitiveness, and sustainability. We know we need to be more competitive, and we'll make adjustments and lay out a plan to get where we need to be in the long term. Since launching the review, I have stressed that our province cannot operate with reduced revenue at this time. We have to review taxes with an eye to supporting business growth and economic activity, But I don't want Nova Scotians to expect lower taxes in the short term, as that just isn't realistic. Where we can make a more immediate impact is with regulations. Streamlining them could have a significant and positive impact on business, and maybe even more so than taxes. If we want businesses to expand and invest, they need to feel confident. They need to know that the environment is stable and predictable. Laurel Broughton, who is with us today, is leading the review. She'll be seeking input, and I know has already begun with some roundtables, as Paul mentioned, and I invite you to add your voices. There's a number of ways to do so. Tom Travis has just reported back to government on how we can move forward with provincial economic development assistance programs. He found that to compete, there are times when we are going to have to pay to play. But we have to do this in the most effective and efficient way possible. Any investments we make must be based on clear principles, including innovation, productivity, and doing a better job of exporting. The Premier has already been quite clear that we are going to do economic development differently. Dr. Travis' recommendations are the foundation for changes to our programs. Nova Scotia companies have to be able to stand on their own here at home and in the face of global competition. In an economy based on ideas, we have to promote sustainable, innovative companies and capitalize on research, development, and export opportunities. We also need to help our traditional industries as they transition to new and higher value products. The 4 sandboxes the Premier just announced are a good example of how we can create that change. They provide a space where people can experiment with new ideas and benefit from the advice of mentors. And these ideas can become strong enough over time that they can stand on their own. We also need to expose young people to the idea of starting their own businesses. This starts by sharing stories about people who've done it. I recently stopped in at the entrepreneurship program at Acadia University and spoke with students there who are starting their own small businesses. They had great ideas for both business and social enterprises. One student, Alex McLean, has started a company, East Coast Lifestyle, that you may have heard of. He's sold over 250,000 hoodies and sweatshirts with his distinctive logo, and his success is inspiring other students at Acadia and farther afield. Our apprenticeship system also plays a major role in getting people ready for good jobs. But did you know that we have the lowest completion rates in the country? We also have problems keeping our apprentices here. This has to change. To keep growing, businesses need a supply of trained, talented, and adaptable labor. As I've said, creating opportunities to keep our young people here is a priority for our government. We have a responsibility to provide a healthy, well-educated workforce to meet the emerging demands of the new economy. Having the right education system is fundamental, and that's why we're keeping our promise to reinvest in education. A lot has changed, and we must ensure our students have the skills they need to navigate and be successful in the workplace now and in the future. That's why we're reviewing the public education system for the first time in 25 years, and we're doing so in a wide-ranging and bold way. We are committed to a new direction for public education, and this is the first step in achieving it. We're in the process of modernizing the system with a focus on attracting more entrants and connecting them to jobs. Where we are now, I wanted to talk to you back about immigration, to talk about a student from Sydney Academy who sent me a note. He was a very bright student. After I made my launch there, he actually wrote a long letter to me, and very negative in the sense that he didn't like the fact that I talked about immigration. He was an IB student, which surprised me even more. He asked why we need to attract more immigrants to our province when people here don't have jobs. And I'm going back to the attitude there that we need to challenge this attitude at every step. And we need to be able to do it from podiums, in your own organizations, wherever you are. We need to talk about the importance of immigration. And that's a point that I know all members of our government are following, and so will all of you, I hope, as partners with us in creating a better Nova Scotia. I did write this young student back, but I said these attitudes still exist, and that letter was evidence of it. So we need to start embracing the facts and talking more about the success stories. Immigrants are well educated, they bring new life and ideas to our province, they start businesses, and they create jobs and open markets. They bring economic prosperity with them. A Premier's Immigration Advisory Council will work collaboratively with the federal government on increasing the number of immigrants we're allowed to sponsor as a province. We will work to develop new options and better align immigrants with our employment needs. But remember, government can't do it alone. We need business to step up. The numbers say what Nova Scotians already know: the status quo in our province isn't working. Together, we must create a competitive environment that inspires confidence in the business community and among Nova Scotians. We need to be less concerned about things we've always done and more concerned about how we can do it better. Government doesn't create jobs, the private sector does. So we have to get out of the way and let the private sector do its job. But we can't ask business to do what we as a government are not doing. We can't ask you to get rid of the 2 to 5 years of experience for young hires when we are doing exactly the same thing. We can't ask you to invest if government is contributing to an uncertain environment. We can't ask you to innovate when we continue to do things the same old way. Ray Ivany has done a great job outlining our challenges as well as some of the ways we can move forward. The conversation about longer-term prospects for our province must continue and evolve to action. We have to shift our mindset to sustainable prosperity. Our choices will not always be easy, and our actions may not always be popular. On one hand, our expenses need to be more in line with our revenues, and on the other hand, we must protect our future by avoiding short-sighted solutions. Investments in education and healthcare are investments in our people and our greatest resource. They're our future. While we have challenges, they are outweighed by both our opportunities and our potential. While I continue to approach our economic and revenue assumptions very cautiously, there are some signs of economic improvement for the coming year. Several sources are forecasting growth. We have natural gas production driven by Deep Panuke, which will help. Other major projects are moving ahead, like the shipyard upgrades that you can see today if you're driving down Barrington Street. You'll see the construction actually rising above street level. And the Maritime Link will start soon to generate activity. These will also increase our confidence. In 2017, we have the coming European trade deal, which presents good prospects for our province. There will be opportunities, and it's imperative that we prepare and seize those opportunities. The national economy is also on pace to expand this year. So despite the current situation, I'm truly confident that a clear plan for the economy and government and a true partnership with the private sector will eventually bring our financial situation to a more sustainable place. I intend to present the budget on April 3rd. It will meet my commitment to be frank and present a frank presentation of the state of our financial affairs. It will also outline more details on how we will clear the way for business growth and meet our responsibilities to provide a healthy, well-educated workforce. As the Ivany report says, we are not doomed to permanent have-not status. We have the assets, opportunities, and capacity to turn this around. I plan to continue talking about, and more importantly, taking action on these issues. I hope all of you will help us drive change wherever and whenever you see the opportunity. And I hope that we can count on you as equal partners in our change. Thank you again for inviting me, and it's been a privilege to talk to you today.